Greetings everybody! Well, I had not planned on taking this long of a break, but I trust that everyone had a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and if you're watching this video, then you at least had a relatively safe New Year. I hadn't intended upon this being the first video that I put out for the new year. However, as you can tell from the title and the thumbnail, this is a very impromptu video about something that is currently going on. What we'll be discussing here is a very, very sensitive matter, and to be brutally honest, I was really torn over whether I should even cover this topic at all. I decided to move forward with this because it might, and I stress might, relate to what Ben Miller and I discussed in our two collaborations titled The Danger of UFO Research, A Disturbing Trend, Parts 1 and 2. I put the links to those two videos in the description. Most of y'all have probably already seen it, but for the benefit of those of you who have not, basically in a nutshell, in those two videos we outline numerous cases of well-known figures in the field of ufology who either died under highly suspicious circumstances or came into some kind of trouble that, by all accounts, gave the appearance of some kind of attempt to discredit and silence them. But is that really what's going on here? Before I go any further, I want to make a few things perfectly clear. I have always gone out of my way to respect people's privacy. Now, this would otherwise be a pretty private matter had it not been for the fact that Tyler has been very public when it comes to commenting about what's going on. Therefore, you can't really call it a private matter anymore. Secondly, I have no axe to grind with Tyler. Believe it or not, and I might get crucified for saying this, but I am a subscriber of his and I genuinely enjoy his content. Yes, I am well aware that he has been caught fabricating things in the past and sadly more than once. So what I say to that is, you know what? When it comes to anything paranormal or UFO related, you have to take it all with a grain of salt. But given Tyler's history, you have to take his videos with an extra grain of salt. I understand why people want to boycott his channel for having hoaxed things before. I get that. It frustrates the heck out of me when people muddy up the waters, and I don't condone that. So don't misunderstand what I'm saying as me, standing up for him muddying up the waters and fabricating things. That's not what I'm saying at all. But still, in my opinion, the majority of the stuff that he talks about might be real. And therefore, in my opinion, that makes his channel at least worth listening to, but taken with an extra grain of salt. Over the span of about 2 months, he has had at least 4 separate run-ins with the law. He's basically attributing all of this to some sort of plot to silence him for his truth-seeking. Granted, yes, this sounds a little kooky at face value, and if you watch some of the other channels talking about this situation, that seems to be the general consensus about what's going on. So, while I personally tend to lean in that direction that these claims might not be the most reliable, I am perhaps more open than most to entertain the possibility that what he's describing might be accurate. I'm not saying that it is. I'm just saying I'm more open to considering that as a possibility. And I think that if you've watched those two videos, The Danger of UFO Research, I think you can understand why I'm more open to that than most. That said, the last thing I want to make perfectly clear in this video is that I am not trying to support one side or the other when it comes to this argument. I am just trying to take an objective look at both sides of the argument and let it speak for itself.
Hey guys, Tyler here with SecureTeam. It's good to see you. I know many of you have been wondering where I've been, And suffice it to say, it's been a very traumatic and tough past couple of months, and an even worse past couple of weeks. The original reason I stopped posting videos was because I started going across the country to film a new documentary that I've been wanting to work on for years. Then I started getting threats to shut my channel down, to stop what I was doing, to basically cease and desist my truth seeking, and to stop digging around, as they called it. I denied those requests, and I kept going. And before I knew it, one night I was sitting in my house. I remember falling asleep, and the next thing I remember is waking up in my car.
Whoa, wait a second, wait. He remembers going to sleep in his house and waking up in his car and being arrested for DWI? That sounds crazy, but confession time. Something very similar, but worse, has actually happened to me before. I need to set this up a little bit. I am a recovering alcoholic, and over my years, I have been arrested and convicted of DWI twice. The first time was just alcohol. The second time was 3 years ago. I did have a very brief relapse with alcohol then, but I was also taking Ambien. Now, the night that happened, the last thing I remember was going to bed, and then the next thing I know, the next day, I find out that I had gotten in my car at some point and was driving around and was pulled over. Granted, yes, I did have alcohol in my system, but I was under the legal limit for alcohol. It was the Ambien that screwed me over. With what Tyler is describing, I'm wondering if that's not Ambien, because what he's saying sounds remarkably similar to what happened to me. With this one charge, because of my personal experience, I kind of have to give him the benefit of the doubt about this. But I need to add one caveat to that. As far as I'm aware, he has not come out and said that he takes Ambien. He has been very public, as have I, about the fact that he has some very, very intense, very bad insomnia. So the possibility that he's on Ambien is not really that big of a stretch. And furthermore, later on he will say that he doesn't drink or do drugs. Now, most of the time when people say do drugs, they're referring to something illicit. If he's not doing anything illicit and he's taking Ambien as prescribed, then yeah, I don't necessarily think he's lying when he says he doesn't drink or do drugs, if in fact he truly doesn't drink or do anything illicit. Here in the United States, depending on what state you live in, you can be arrested for either a driving while impaired or a similar charge from nothing more than sleep deprivation. I want to throw out the possibility that maybe that's what these DWIs or DUIs were about. Again, I don't know if that's what's going on. I'm just trying to play not devil's advocate, but Tyler's advocate here. It is a little known fact. You can also get DWIs from taking Benadryl or other things that you'd never really think would qualify for DWI.
One night, I was sitting in my house. I remember falling asleep, and the next thing I remember is waking up in my car with a police officer outside of it, who then charged me with DUI. Now, if any of you have known me for any number amount of years, and my family will tell you this, I'm not a drug addict, and I certainly do not drink alcohol. I think I've maybe drinking a drink of alcohol maybe once every year, and that's usually at New Year's. So immediately I knew I was being set up for something. But I went to jail, I protested my innocence, I was released that same day, and within a week or two, the police here where I am staying got a phone call, an anonymous phone call, that I was beating my girlfriend at the house we're staying at. The police showed up, and like they usually do in domestic violence situations, whether there's evidence or not, they usually take someone to jail, usually the man. My wife protested and said that I hadn't touched her and that nothing had happened. But the police nonetheless put me in handcuffs and took me to jail.
Admittedly, this part sounds a little fishy. He's claiming that the police took him despite his wife's alleged denial to the police that any sort of assault took place. Furthermore, he claims that even in situations where the supposed victim claims no assault took place, that the standard protocol would still be to arrest the supposed assailant. I'm not so sure if that's true. It doesn't seem like it would be, but I couldn't find any documentation online to definitively say one way or the other. I feel it's important to point out that here in the US, those who are accused of any crime are presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. It seems that, to date, the only conviction was the DUI charge, and the date of conviction was December 10th, 2019. Back to the assault charge. I reached out to his wife about a week ago. I haven't heard back from her, and quite frankly, I don't blame her one bit. But as she hasn't responded, the responsible thing to do is to assume that she doesn't want to comment and probably wishes to remain anonymous. Hence, I have marked her name out of the portion of the message I sent her, as shown here. If she were to ever speak out to defend Tyler's innocence, it would most likely be on Tyler's channel before it was anywhere else. Her decision to refrain from public comment may be under the advice of a lawyer, and this is important to keep in mind because while her current silence has absolutely no bearing on Tyler's case in a court of law, it certainly doesn't bode very well for him in the far less important court of public opinion.
I was put under a probation hold with no bail and spent a week in jail being threatened and beaten by guards at the Knox County Jail. I was told to keep my mouth shut if I knew what was good for me. They didn't specifically mention my channel, but I understood what they meant. This is, if there ever was, a setup. All of you who know me, you know I'm a kind man. I couldn't hurt a fly, let alone a woman or my wife. I'm certainly not a drinker. I don't do drugs. And so, it seems to me that when the threats to shut down my channel failed, that they upped the ante. They put me in jail under false charges, to which I've organized a team of lawyers.
Before we rush to any judgment about what Tyler is saying here, yes, okay, it sounds kooky, but there are two other cases that are actually kind of similar. Let's look at Bob Lazar and Stan Romanek. Now, those of you who are as into ufology as I am, well, y'all already know this, but for those of you who do not, without going too deeply into it, Bob Lazar, there was some pretty clear evidence of his life history, much of it being covered up. There were multiple charges brought against him, and many people still believe that he was innocent of most, if not all, of these charges. But The charge that's most pertinent to the point that I am trying to make here is the charge of aiding and abetting a prostitution ring. He was convicted of this in 1990. Now, fast forward much more recently, Stan Romanek, a very, very well-known self-proclaimed alien abductee, his crime is... wow. I don't want to verbalize it, but suffice to say it had to do with images that were found on his hard drive. In his defense, he had been claiming for a long time before any of these charges were ever made that his computer was being hacked. So, when this news came out about the images that were found, the UFO community is still really divided as to whether or not he was truly guilty of it. And that's true of Bob Lazar also. So, back to Tyler. Is he guilty? Now let's look at Tyler's charge of domestic abuse. The three charges that I just spoke about, from Bob Lazar, the aiding and abetting prostitution ring, to Stan Romanek, to, the pictures that were on his computer, to domestic assault with Tyler Glockner. There's something else that these three accusations all have in common. They are all of a particular type of nature that if someone is accused of this sort of thing, it's automatically going to turn them into a social pariah. Just suppose the people who are claiming that they were set up, just suppose there's something to that. If, in fact, they were set up, what's the best way to discredit someone and to turn the public against them, to turn the public opinion against those people? You accuse them of doing something really just disgusting and something that we all love to hate, These three crimes are perfect examples of that. I have no idea if any of these three men were guilty or if any of these three men were innocent. Truthfully, I think the only people that truly do know are they themselves. There's one other possibility that I want to bring up regarding the assault charge, and I've not heard anyone mention this before, but it's an unfortunate fact that very popular YouTubers can have a tendency to be swatted. This is a lot of YouTubers no longer live stream on location. I remember Explore With Us, maybe about a year ago or so, they got swatted, and they don't do that anymore. So is this assault charge, was Tyler swatted? I don't know. Just throwing it out there as a possibility. Okay, so 3 of Tyler's 4 charges had something to do with him being in his vehicle. Just to entertain the possibility, what if he had some sort of GPS tracker on his car? It's a weak argument, or it's a weak possibility considering as there's 0 evidence for it, but you know me, I like mentioning every single conceivable possibility I can think of, so there. As I was looking at these charges, something else came to mind. All 4 of them can either implicitly or explicitly be indicative of someone under the influence of some kind of substance.
But this is really tough. I spent a week in jail. I was beaten by guards. I was told to keep my mouth shut. And this whole thing has been so traumatic, I've had to go on antidepressants because I've been suicidal. Apparently, something I've said or revealed in one of my thousands of videos has upset someone, rubbed someone the wrong way. But I want you guys to know, you know who I am. The 2 million of you who've subscribed to me and those of you who've been with me from the beginning know that I'm a good man. I wouldn't hurt a fly. in this past week, having been in jail and just being released, I can tell you that there's something much bigger going on. I don't know what it is. I'm trying to grasp it. My lawyers are doing their best just to try to figure out what's going on because none of it makes sense. My wife doesn't understand it because none of it makes sense. I don't understand it. What I can gather from all of this is that these people out there who would want to silence you, they are real. And they have the muscle and the power to silence you. And that's what they've tried to do to me. They've tried... When it didn't work when they threatened me and told me to stop talking and to shut down my channel, and I said no, that didn't work. So the next step is to arrest you on a bunch of false charges and to ruin your reputation.